I was 22, and from the outside, my life looked like it was on the right track. I had a job that paid the bills, a small apartment I could afford, and a routine that gave me stability. People around me thought I was content, even lucky. They often told me, "You're so young, you already have it all figured out." But if anyone had looked close enough, if anyone had dared to press a little deeper, they would have seen it, the emptiness that never left my chest. It wasn't the job. It wasn't the city. It wasn't even about not knowing what I wanted from life. It was love. Or rather, the absence of it. I wanted it the way others wanted air. A love that would consume me, ignite me, make the rest of the world fade into background noise. I dreamed of passion that made mornings brighter and nights longer, the kind of love that poets barely managed to capture. I wanted the kind of love that destroyed you and rebuilt you in the same breath. And I thought I had found it. But it wasn't mine to keep. He wasn't mine to keep. His name was Daniel. And he belonged to someone else, my best friend, the girl I had known since childhood, the one whose secrets I carried, whose laughter had been woven into the soundtrack of my life. She was married to him. And I was in love with him. Not in the silly, fleeting way of teenage crushes. Not in the way you tell yourself, "It will pass." This was deeper. It was the way my pulse quickened when he entered the room. The way my chest ached when I saw the soft way he placed a hand on her back when they walked together. The way he laughed at her stories and looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. And I was always there. The friend. The confidant. The one who helped them when the storm clouds of marriage rolled in. The one who listened when they fought. The one who gave advice, offered comfort, fixed the cracks. I was the glue that held them together. And every time I did, it shattered me a little more. You'd think that distance would help. That staying away would ease the ache. But life had other plans for me. I was too close. Too involved. Too tied to them both. They invited me to dinners, family gatherings, quiet evenings with wine and laughter. I sat at their table, smiled at their jokes, washed dishes with her while hearing him laugh in the living room. And every moment, every second, I lived with the piercing reminder, he will never be mine. Sometimes, when they argued, I became the middle ground. She would call me, tears choking her voice. "Can you talk to him? Can you help us?" And I did. God help me, I did. I sat with him, listened to his frustrations, nodded at his pain, and gave him the words to make her forgive him. I handed him back to her every time. And yet, in those stolen moments, when his eyes softened and he said, "You always understand me," a tiny, forbidden part of me came alive. That part of me wanted to scream, "It's because I love you. It's because I see you." But I never did. Instead, I wore the mask of loyalty. The faithful friend. The safe secret keeper. All while my heart was on fire. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself why fate had played this cruel trick. Why him? Why her? Why me? And there were darker nights, nights when the thought crossed my mind like a shadow. What if I stepped in? What if I became the reason they broke apart? But those thoughts, dangerous as they were, never lasted. Because as much as I wanted him, I loved him enough to want him happy. Even if his happiness was not with me. So I buried it. Every glance, every spark, every whispered dream of what could have been, I buried it all under layers of silence. And to the world, I was just the girl next to happiness. Close enough to touch it. But never close enough to claim it. Every day felt like a performance. I woke up, dressed, went to work, smiled at my colleagues, explained formulas to my students, and played the role of the young woman who had her life together. Numbers were simple. Equations made sense. 2 + 2 was always 4. There was a strange comfort in that certainty. But life wasn't made of numbers. Life was messy, unfair, illogical. Life gave me the man I loved and placed him in the arms of the one person I should never hurt. I lived in the shadows of their happiness. There were mornings when she would call me just to share something sweet he had done for her. "He made me coffee before work today. Can you believe it? After all these years, he still does the little things." I forced a smile through the phone. "That's wonderful. You're lucky." Lucky. The word stung like a blade. Then there were evenings when I sat across from them at dinner, watching them share inside jokes, their hands brushing as they reached for the same dish. I laughed when they laughed, nodded when they spoke, but inside, I was folding in on myself, piece by piece. No one saw the cracks. No one heard the quiet sobs muffled into my pillow at night. No one knew that the girl who gave advice, who smiled in family photos, who seemed unshaken, was breaking. I lived between shadows. Too close to light, too far from peace. Silence is heavy. It doesn't just sit in your chest, it grows roots, wrapping around your lungs, pressing against your ribs, stealing your breath. My silence was the prison I built for myself. I couldn't tell her. She was my best friend. The one who had held my hand in every heartbreak, the one who had whispered secrets in the dark when we were kids. How could I betray her with the truth? I couldn't tell him. He was married, committed, happy, or at least, happy enough. And what right did I have to destroy that with my confession? So I carried it. Quietly. Alone. There were moments when I thought he saw it, the flicker in my eyes, the hesitation in my voice when he thanked me for being there for them. Sometimes, when we talked, his gaze lingered too long, as if searching for something beneath the surface. But he never asked. And I never told. Instead, I became the one they leaned on. The one they trusted. The one who made sure everything looked perfect. I was the secret keeper. The silent lover. The invisible one. At night, I imagined another world. One where he looked at me the way he looked at her. One where we walked together, side by side, without shame, without betrayal. One where love wasn't forbidden. But dawn always came. And with it, reality. The ring on his finger. The smile on her face. The silence in my heart. And so I lived, carrying a love that wasn't mine, in a life that wasn't mine, with a hope that would never be mine. Dreams used to be my escape. When I closed my eyes, I could imagine a world where he was mine. A world where love wasn't borrowed, where it wasn't stolen from someone else. But the older I grew, the heavier the dreams became. Because every time I woke, I had to face the truth. He wasn't mine. He never was. Sometimes I hated myself for the fantasies. For imagining the warmth of his hand in mine, for replaying his laugh in my head as if it belonged to me. Every stolen glance, every unspoken word, became poison. Even my career began to feel like a blur. I taught my students with the same patience as always, but my mind drifted. I'd stare at equations on the blackboard and wonder, why couldn't life be as clear as math? Why couldn't there be one right answer, one undeniable solution? But love wasn't an equation. It was chaos. And my heart was losing the battle. One night, after a family dinner, I walked home alone under the streetlights. I replayed every laugh they shared, every affectionate touch. My chest ached so badly I thought it might break open. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to confess everything and finally be free. But instead, I went home, collapsed onto my bed, and cried until dawn. That was when I realized. Even my dreams were hurting me now. They weren't escapes anymore, they were reminders of everything I could never have. Letting go doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in fragments. The first time was when I stopped answering late-night calls, when she wanted to vent about the little fights they had. It killed me to hear about their struggles, knowing I would never be the solution she needed. The second time was when I skipped a family gathering, lying that I wasn't feeling well. The truth was, I couldn't stand to see them together again. Not that day. Not when my heart felt too raw. The third time was when I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You can't keep living like this. You're disappearing." Because I was. Piece by piece. And yet, letting go felt like tearing off my own skin. He had become so entangled in my identity, in my every thought, that the idea of a life without him felt like death. But I had to try. I had to learn that love didn't always mean holding on. Sometimes, love meant stepping back. Sometimes, it meant loving silently, from afar, while building a life that wasn't built on pain. So I started small. Morning walks alone. Journals filled with words I could never say out loud. Long evenings of studying myself, asking, what do I want beyond him? Who am I, if not the girl who loved him? The answers didn't come easily. But they started to come. Letting go wasn't an act. It was a journey. A lesson written slowly, painfully, across my heart. Healing didn't arrive as fireworks. It came in whispers, in the smallest of ways. I started with morning walks in the park. The air was crisp, the sky soft with pale light, and for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. I noticed things I had ignored before, the sound of children laughing, the gentle way leaves swayed in the breeze, the rhythm of my own footsteps. Then, I began writing. At first, it was just scattered words in a notebook, fragments of feelings I couldn't say aloud. But slowly, sentences formed. Pages filled. My pain transformed into poetry, my longing into quiet reflections. For once, I wasn't writing about him. I was writing about me. At work, I found myself giving more of my heart to my students. Their innocence, their curiosity, it reminded me that life wasn't all loss. When one of them finally solved a difficult problem on her own, her face lit up, and I realized something. I could still be proud. I could still give love, even if it wasn't the kind I had once dreamed of. I wasn't healed. Not yet. But I was learning to build a new heart, one that didn't depend on someone who was never mine. Still, no matter how far I walked, no matter how many words I wrote, the shadow of him remained. I saw it in the cafe where we used to meet as friends. In the corner table where he once sat across from me, smiling without realizing what that smile did to me. I heard it in the songs on the radio, in the low hum of love ballads that spoke of promises and forever, the kind I would never hear from him. I even felt it in my dreams, though less often now. Sometimes he appeared, standing there with that same gentle look, and for a few fleeting moments, he was mine. Then I'd wake, and reality would remind me, he belonged to someone else. Letting go doesn't erase the past. It only teaches you to live alongside it. I had moments of strength, yes. Days when I believed I could move on. But then there were nights when the silence pressed too hard, when I longed for the impossible. Nights when I admitted to myself that part of me would always love him. The difference was this. Now, I wasn't drowning in that love. I was carrying it. Quietly. Gracefully. Like a shadow that walked with me, but no longer defined me. There comes a moment when you look at your own reflection and realize you've been waiting. Waiting for someone to notice you. Waiting for love that would never arrive. Waiting for life to begin. I had been waiting for him, for years. For his glance, his words, his love. And when I finally admitted to myself that none of it would come, I asked a question I had never dared to before. What if I chose me? At first, the thought scared me. I was so used to pouring myself into others, their happiness, their struggles, their needs, that I had forgotten how to pour into myself. Choosing me felt selfish, even wrong. But slowly, I began to see the truth. If I didn't choose myself, no one else ever truly could. So I did. I signed up for a painting class, even though I had no idea how to hold a brush. I bought flowers for my own apartment, bright colors spilling across the room like little bursts of joy. I traveled to a nearby town on my own, walking unfamiliar streets and smiling at strangers. And for the first time, I wasn't doing these things to distract myself from him. I was doing them for me. Of course, the ache didn't disappear. Some nights it still clung to me, whispering old memories. But every time I chose myself, every time I gave myself permission to breathe, to grow, to feel, something shifted. The pain was no longer my identity. It was just a part of my story. I began to understand. Loving him had shaped me, yes. But choosing myself, that would define me. It started quietly. A thought so fragile I almost pushed it away. What if there was someone out there meant to love me back? Not someone I had to hide for, or sacrifice for. Not someone who belonged to someone else. But someone who would see me, all of me, and choose me, freely. For years, that idea had felt impossible, almost dangerous. But now, as I walked further away from the shadow of my secret love, the thought no longer hurt. It felt like light. I began to dream, not of him, but of someone else. A man I hadn't met yet. A life I hadn't lived. I didn't know his name, his face, or his story. But I knew how he would make me feel. Safe. Seen. Cherished. And in those dreams, I wasn't the quiet girl hiding her heart anymore. I was someone strong, radiant, alive. For the first time, I let myself believe that I deserved this. That maybe, just maybe, it was waiting for me. One evening, as I walked past their house, the house where laughter spilled through the windows, where my love lived his life without me, I stopped. I stood there, staring, and felt the old ache swell in my chest. This was where my love story had stayed trapped, like a bird in a cage. But I couldn't keep circling the same prison anymore. So, I whispered a goodbye. Not to him, because he would never hear it. But to the version of me that kept waiting, hoping, bleeding silently. That night, I set her free. And when I walked away, the weight I'd been carrying for years began to loosen, thread by thread. Healing isn't a straight line. Some days, I woke up with hope. Other days, I woke up with grief. But through it all, I kept moving, inch by inch, towards myself. I laughed again, louder than I thought possible. I cried too, but the tears no longer drowned me. And slowly, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for love anymore. I was building it, inside me, around me, within the choices I made. For the first time, I didn't feel half alive. I felt whole. Some stories end with love found. Mine ends with love reclaimed. Yes, I loved him. Yes, I lost him. But in the ruins of that secret, unspoken love, I found something I had been searching for all along. Myself. And though my heart still longs, though some nights the silence feels heavy, I know now that I am not broken. I am a woman who can stand on her own. I am a woman who can love without being loved back, and still rise. I am a woman who has finally stopped waiting. Because the truth is, I was never almost loved. I was always enough.